Vaheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Vaheguru Ji Ki Fateh. Thank you all for joining us for today's discussion forum series, an event that we've been planning for a while, for over a year actually. And today we're going to be discussing gender inequality in the Sikh community. Just firstly, a little bit about the Sikh Press Association. So the Sikh Press Association puts on events like this regularly, once every 2 or 3 months. This is, I think, our 7th event like this in the last approximately 2 years. For those that don't know anything about the Sikh Press Association, we are a news agency that's powered by the charity Everything's 13, most known for their work, for their projects Basics of Sikhi. They also do projects that are Mighty Khalsa and Kiddy Sangat. And so in order for us to put on events like this, we do need your support. So any donations would be grateful. Please go to everythings13.org where you'll find instructions on how to donate. On to the event today. So firstly, in regards to this panel being entirely female for an event that's based on gender equality, the thought of the Sikh Press Association is when we discuss this topic, the first people we need to listen to are the women in our community. Therefore, we decided on an all-female panel. The format of the event is there will be questions directed towards the panelists, and at the end of each question, once every panelist has had to say, anyone from the audience can also chip in and ask a question either to the panelists or just give a comment. So at the end, do feel free to put your hands up at the end of every question, and somebody will come around and hand you a mic, hopefully. So straight on to our first question of the evening. So the first question of the evening is, does the Sikh community need a Me Too campaign? Again, does the Sikh community need a Me Too campaign? So this is in reference to the hashtag Me Too campaign, which saw approximately 19 million different people use the hashtag on social media in 2018 to discuss their own experiences of either sexual abuse, domestic violence, or anything akin. So for this question, I'm going to open with Sukhi Kaur. Sukhi Kaur, does the Sikh community need a Me Too campaign?
Yes. I don't think we not only need one, I think we are massively overdue one. And I think before I offer any of my personal views on this, I might take a bit of time on this, but I really want to share this. So this is taken from the Core Movement UK. So it's a profile that I've been religiously following since I found it. So it's the Core Movement, which started in Canada. And I think they now have a UK counterpart. And I've just taken a story off there. This is why we are not, yes, we do need the Me Too movement, but we are massively overdue one. And I am going to share this story to understand the context of what a Me Too movement is and why we are so massively behind in this area. When I was 17, I got sick. My mum was worried, so she took me to see this Baba who came recommended from one of her friends. So my mum, my brother, and I went to see him. He was Amrit Shak, quite elderly, and had a very calm and cheerful personality. I was initially very skeptical, and I was not sure if I believed in holy men. As our visits to him increased, I found myself enjoying his company. Our dad had passed away when we were young, so I guess I kind of looked up to him in a fatherly way. After a month, he encouraged me to do my part, Sikh prayers in the morning, and would tell us stories. I found myself wanting to go to the Gurdwara and listen to Kirtan and really connecting with my faith in a way I never did before. I was really comfortable around this Baba, and each time I would go over, he would do malish of my abdomen. My mum and my brother were always in the room, so I wasn't worried, and this Baba seemed trustworthy. One day when I got back from college, Mum said the Baba had phoned and asked me to come to his house to pick up some special amrit that he has prepared for me. Mum was going out to work that evening and my brother was out with his mates. I told my mum I'd get the bus and go myself to pick it up. She was fine with that. Like I said, my family and I had built up trust with this guy, and I really didn't think I had anything to worry about. So I turned up at his house and he gave me a hug and told me he had been thinking about me and told me that Guru Nanak had come into his dreams and told him that my health problems were very soon going to go away. He kept telling me how blessed I was, etc. And I was a bit uncomfortable with all the praise, but it felt nice to be cared about. He asked me to drink a cup of amrit that he had prepared for me and then told me he would polish my stomach straight after, so the effects of the amrit would be even more potent. I stupidly agreed. Whilst I was lying on the bed, I noticed his hands were moving outside of the area where he normally massaged. I froze, but I kept calm, telling myself that this guy was Amrit Shak and trustworthy. I had nothing to worry about. Then his hands went under my bra and he began touching my breasts. I wanted to die. I couldn't believe what was happening. I didn't move. Then his hands went into my underwear. And the whole time he did that, he kept saying, Dhan Guru Nanak. I lay there frozen, not knowing what to do. He then tried to sit me up and hug me. I felt very heavy and weightless, and then my phone started to ring. That snapped me out of my daze. I could move again. It was my brother asking me where I was. I quickly got up, grabbed my things, and ran out the house. I got on the bus to get me back home. I guess I was still in shock about what happened. I got home and ran into my bathroom and had a shower. I felt so dirty and unclean. I ended up having a panic attack that night, and my brother was freaked out. He knew I went to see the Baba because my mum had told him. I eventually told him what happened, and he started to cry with me. I made him promise not to tell Mum. When Mum got back from work, we got her phone and blocked the Baba's number and changed some of the digits in his number. I told her that the Baba had moved house and he would be in touch once he settled. She was really suspicious and kept asking what happened when I went to see him. I didn't tell her anything, and she eventually dropped it. My life hasn't been the same. My brother and I never spoke about it, and it's time for me to get married, and I have refused every rishta that has come. I don't trust men. I don't trust men who are Amrit Shak. I cannot go to the Gurdwara anymore. That man ruined my life. Thank you for setting up this page. Maybe if I share my story, other girls might find the strength to do something. I didn't, and I live with that regret every single day. And this was from unknown Coventry girl. So I don't think anything much more needs to be said after that, and why we need that. And if you look at the Canadian page, I've been in touch with the Bibi who runs that page. Her inbox is at 500 at the moment of stories like that. So I don't even think we understand how extreme the problem is, because we have this culture of silencing our women around this issue. And I talk from experience. I've sat in some structures where I have openly witnessed burying of perpetrators within our community that are abusing our girls. And it has to stop. For me, I have to show my face to my Guru when I leave this earth. And if I don't do anything to stop it, I don't care if it makes me a bad person or if you fall out of respect. But this is why events like this are so important, and why we need to come together to tackle this. Because there was a time where girls would come to the Sikhs when women's honour was at risk. Now our own girls are being dishonoured in their own homes, and we are powerless to do anything about it. So yes, we do need a Me Too movement, but it needs to be, the question I think needs to expand more, and I would love to open this to the other women sat here. What should that campaign look like? It's not enough to say that yes, we need a movement. We need to have a complete structure on how we deal with this issue. I had some ideas, but I just don't want to take up so much time, and I'd love to bring some of the other panellists into that. Thank you.
So we've heard that there are actually some Me Too movements happening. That's the Core Movement on Instagram, and I believe they're also on Twitter, and there's Core Movement UK, for those of you that want to check it out for yourself. I'm going to now pass on this same question to Rupinder. Knowing the power of social media and media in general, and as Suki just said, that sometimes there is silencing of voices, and especially female voices, on such topics. How important do you think a Me Too campaign could be for the Sikh community?
I think even outside of the Sikh community, I think a social movement which can become a little bit faceless, so it gives women the power to feel free and open dialogue, have conversations, join movements, find support within those movements, is so powerful. And especially if they can do it without openly showing their identity or their name, it's one step forward. And I think social media generally has so much power. I mean, this is women that are talking about these situations in Canada, and that's now led to something here. It's so easy to kind of spread this information and make it global. I think it's a great outlet. I think it's a very powerful outlet. In terms of the structure of how that would really rise, the same way that the Me Too movement rose, I mean, I don't really have an answer to that, unless you have high-profile Sikh women who are openly advocates to discuss this. I think that could be a start.
Next, I'll open it up to anyone else on the panel that wishes to give their opinion. Just to add a bit more to the question, the Me Too movement itself led to the losses of jobs for hundreds of men that were accused by multiple women of inappropriate behavior towards women. What kind of tangible impact, perhaps similar to something like that, would we like to see from a hashtag Me Too campaign in the Sikh community? I'll start with Ashmit Kaur.
Do I have to answer your question?
Or you can give your own.
Thank you. I don't think a Me Too movement is enough. I think if we have a Me Too movement, it's just copying somebody else's structure, and what we need to do is be able to tailor things to our community and to our people. From a therapeutic perspective, some women aren't in a position to be able to speak on that kind of level about the abuse that they've endured. And so what we need to do is look to our history and see what was in place when these things were happening. So just joining on from what you were saying, Benji, actually people did used to go to the Khalsa. And there's a Sakhi of when there was a Muslim and he was kidnapping and abusing young girls. And at one point he took a girl from the house of a Hindu, and the Khalsa found out and they went there and they killed him, which may seem like justice in some people's eyes, but the Khalsa did more than that. They didn't just go there and kill him, they took the girl into their house, they looked after the girl, and the girl told them her story, and she said to them that she was invited into his bed and that he abused her when she was in that bed, just like the other girls that he'd abused previously. And then the Forge decided that actually in order to be able to tackle this even further, we need to be able to provide support, long-term and long-standing support to this young girl. And so they said to her that because of course we know that there's a lot of honour and shame attached to sexual abuse and sexual violence, they knew that her family would look down on her. But the Khalsa doesn't look down on anybody. And so they said that they would make her a part of who they were. They will make her a daughter of the Guru. And that was the path of truth, and that was the path of honour. And she accepted that path. And when the time came for her to be married, they explained to her father and they explained to her family that actually, you know, she is now a daughter of Guru Gobind Singh Ji Maharaj, and therefore she has all of the honour in the world. And when it came to her wedding, the way it's described in Ityas is that a bed sheet hit the floor. And when that bed sheet hit the floor, the Singh said to everybody, the Singh said to the Sangat that actually we now need to provide even more support. We need to provide financial support. And they said to the Sangat, give everything that you can. And it's described again as that bed sheet hit the floor, that it was filled with gold coins, filled with rupees. And that just goes to show that actually the Khalsa, even in the time of the Guru, this is after Guru Gobind Singh Ji Maharaj, even in that time, these things were happening, but the Khalsa was doing something about it. So if we want to create something like a Me Too movement, I don't think that's enough. I think there needs to be support where actually survivors, whether that's men or women or young people or adults, whoever it is, at any ages, know that they can come to the Khalsa and know that they're going to be supported in recovery of their trauma. So Me Too campaign may be the first step, and it may work for some people, but I don't think it's enough. So we need to really reflect on that and say, okay, well, if this is the first step, what are we going to do more, and how can we add to that and take the essence of that Sakhi, which is just one, by the way, that's been repeated several times. That didn't just happen once. How can we take the essence of that Saki and the essence of who the Khalsa are and implement that into modern day?
Thank you, Ashmeet Kaur. Passing on the question to Sukhmani Kaur on the end of our panel. Sukhmani, as somebody who helps lead a Sikh organization, can we get your opinion on, does the Sikh community need a Me Too campaign?
It's very difficult for me to talk on this topic, not just because of the personal experiences, but I want to talk about the other side of the story. So obviously there's women who go through this, but also there is the men who do these acts. And what does Sikh community, what institution, what body do we have to actually deal with those people? We don't have that. So that's something that needs to be really looked at. And in the Guru's times, probably they would be brought to Guru's court, right? When the Khalsa was the army, the Khalsa would face them. But now, what is Khalsa doing, right? Khalsa is in central London making money. So we really need to prioritize this. And there are different organizations in the UK and worldwide as well, but do they really have the power to deal with this? So that's a different kind of organization that actually deals with the problems and not only helps the women who went through this, and not only women, men as well, because there's a sexual abuse for men as well, but actually who punishes those people, or there is a tool, or there is a way to deal with that in that side. Thank you.
Finally, to Manjit Kaur, who heads up the Binti Project, a charity about female menstrual dignity. Firstly, answer, does the Sikh community need a Me Too campaign? But also, I have a question for everyone on the panel. Are any of you actually surprised at the amount of women that come forward when we hear that the core movement has 500 messages in their inbox?
I mean, I think firstly I'd like to start with the fact that I've been here for 5 decades. So I remember a time when I was growing up, it was quite normal for women to be subjected to encounters with men that went over the line. And this Me Too movement that's started over the last few years is kind of really been needed for a very long time. But I think from understanding why it's like that, we kind of need to go back to the basic. Until we have equality in our religion, we're always going to be seen as the side that can get abused, and nobody's going to talk about it because we get blackmailed, we have izzat and things like that to consider. We should really be educating our sons for the future. When I was growing up, it was very clear to me that my father, with his bug, was somebody that everybody respected. His bug was his crown. And if I was ever in trouble, I would always kind of do a beeline to a Singh. But do our young Sikh men know what the bug symbolizes? Do they know that it is kind of that beacon of light and hope? If we're ever in trouble, that's where we go. If our Sikh men are abusing their privilege of being in the Gurdwara and for having that respect because they are in the Gurdwara, then yes, absolutely, they should be brought up. But I think if we're ever going to change anything long term, we'll be able to do that with equality for women, firstly, and also secondly, teaching our boys what the bug means so that they don't disrespect it.
If you could just also add on, are you surprised at the magnitude of the women coming forward just from this one core movement on Twitter?
No, absolutely not. There's no surprise because I can probably guarantee that nearly every single girl in this room has experienced some form of abuse where a man or a boy has crossed the line.
Sukiko, if you would like to add to that.
Again, when I reached out to the BB behind the core movement, and she made that, and it's like that horrible confirmation that you sort of know it happens, but you don't really want to believe it. And when she gave me that number 400, I was just like, wow, and she was very overwhelmed. And when we go back to that question about what this campaign should look like, it's actually really, really simple. It's about providing safe spaces for victims, whether that be online, whether that be through meetings or events, or just a number or an email address where they can just reach out. But then we also need to have that network of counsellors, CBT therapy, holistic therapy, you know, all the different mechanisms that a woman can use and have access to help her heal. Because one documentary I would recommend everyone watch here is called Heal. It's on Netflix, and it talks about adverse childhood experiences and how if you do not recover from these experiences, they will manifest through health problems, psychological problems, mental problems as you go later on in life. Fantastic documentary. But for me, I wasn't born into a Sikh family. I was born into a Punjabi family, so we saw all of this happening in like what Benji said. We grew up and you either knew someone who'd been abused, or there was domestic violence in the house, or you had those men and boys who overstepped the boundary. Maybe it was naive of me, but when I took Amrit, I assumed that I was escaping that and coming into something good and wholesome. And I'm not trying to say that that doesn't exist, it does. But there are pockets within the Sikh community, within our gurdwaras, within the structures that are set up, within certain aspects of jathe and leaderships, where I have witnessed with my own eyes the protecting of perpetrators at the expense of the victim, to the point where the victim is shamed, humiliated. In one case, her nanny from India, who'd been dead for 20 years, was brought into it, and this girl had no honor because of some dead dadeen from India. And it was ridiculous that I was looking at these men, these elderly men who I had so much respect for, take this tone and narrative. So no, it's not a surprise, but we do what we do. We get together, we come together, and some of us are already doing work on this. And it's just understanding basic concepts such as safeguarding. Why do our Gurdwara not have a safeguarding champion? Very, very simple thing, a safeguarding policy. There should be someone within your Gurdwara committees who is trained, who is trustworthy, and is a professional that the congregation can go to report a safeguarding concern. That safeguarding champion that can make the adequate referrals. These are all really, really simple things, but what are we battling against? It's this old system of besti and izzat and not wanting to acknowledge that this problem exists. It is a problem, it does exist, and we need to sort it.
Any further comments from the panel regarding the topic itself and also the scale of the problem? Anyone? Any comments from the audience? Any questions for the panelists? Any at all?
Don't be shy.
Yeah, I know it's a very difficult topic, but please don't hesitate. Do we have a roaming mic? No? Okay. It's okay.
Just following on from some of the comments that Suki has made, again, one of the solutions, just one, and a step forward, would be something very simple, like safeguarding policies, that there should be a demand for each and every Sikh institution to have the safeguarding policies. And also, the other simple thing is, Gurdwaras and Sikh institutions, if they are registered charities, there's a legal obligation for them to have safeguarding policies. So why not call out all Gurdwaras and all Sikh institutions if they have these policies in place, and if not, why not? And report them to the Charities Commission, because they are legal duties. The Church of England and the Catholic Church, I mean, they've got their own problems, but if you have a look at their policies they have in place to deal with safeguarding, they've got fantastic policies in place with safeguarding officers and a whole system, and even some of the schools, the leading, I think the Sikh schools are still very new, but some of the old established Hindu schools have got fantastic policies in place. So that should be a first point of call. And also, why not, as a Me Too movement, why not have a zero tolerance movement? Just call it out, and a name and a shame movement. You know, we've got to take this in hand now.
just want to come in on that. I actually did name and shame one perpetrator. I was threatened with legal action for doing that because victims were so terrified. And I had one case where I dealt with where we had a potential case of 20 years of abuse of vulnerable girls with autism, broken families. And when we attempted to confront it, I had letters warning me from a solicitor. And also, there was a whole blanket shutdown on a Panthic level because this person was affiliated, very well known.
That is the major problem.
And also another issue is, sorry, I'm totally dominating this because I've been wanting to rant about this for years, so do bear with me. What we also had was the victims' parents were shutting the victims down. So we encouraged these girls to pluck up the courage to tell their parents first because we wanted to get the families involved. We sat with them and then the families were just like, we know it happened, but you don't know this community. If it comes out that my daughter was involved in this, ਇਹਦਾ ਬਿਆਨ ਨਹੀਂ ਹੋਣਾ, ਇਹਦੀ life ਖਰਾਬ ਹੋ ਜਾਣੀ ਆ. So there's no way we can go to the police. So then you start going to your internal Sikh structures because we cannot force these girls to go to the police. And then what ends up happening is this little pull, oh, well, if there's an issue, tell the victims to go to the police. We know many of our Asian girls and women and even will not go to the police. But then the gap in the Sikh structures supporting the safeguarding aspect. And it's just, this is the kind of things I had. We don't have a basic understanding of what safeguarding is and then legally prosecuting. What I find is Sikh institutions use the fact that girls are not prepared to go to the police and say, well, if they had a case, it would have gone. Even known paedophiles and perpetrators of sexual abuse have escaped justice. But our leaders like to use that as देख police को गए सी कोई केस नहीं बनिया सारा कुछ ठीक आ इन्हां नु स्टेजां ते बताओ knowing that they're massive safeguarding risk and we are allowing perpetrators access to the stage, access to community members, and this is one of my, and if we don't do something about it, when it explodes and when it comes out, it will be through the national media and it will come outside of the point where we will no longer be in a position to be able to not control it, that's the wrong word, but have the procedures and systems in place to genuinely support. Once it goes outside of well, we've seen that, and it's happening with other faith communities. I'll stop now, sorry. This is the really passionate subject of mine.
So, any further comment on this topic, or perhaps a comment from the audience? We'll take two more, and then we'll move on. And
just one really short point, which is that, of course, it's really important for the girls to talk about it, but from the point of our own community, I think men and women have to be equally responsible in the process of naming and shaming and supporting. If men don't equally hold other men responsible, it's not going to make a difference.
Yeah.
thank you. Benji.
Yeah, just a general point, which is that obviously there's to create the kind of safeguarding structures that exist in the wider community has taken years. We know of all of those high-profile cases like Baby P, etc., and what's happened in local authorities. So for us to run something parallel, which is specifically for the Sikh Punjabi community, is a massive task. All we can really realistically do is feed into the existing system because they have the trained counsellors, etc. But obviously we might be able to offer to be the first port of call for people who say this is happening but I don't want to go to the police, etc. So that's just a general point. But I did want to talk about social media, because it seems to be that that's, apart from being terrified of your parents and the local community, a lot of cases have involved young girls, boys, whatever, being blackmailed, arms twisted because of social media, things being put out there. And again, that goes across the board in all the communities. So are there specific things, guidelines, guidance that you can give? Because let's imagine if I was a young girl and someone was blackmailing me and that, you better carry on doing this, otherwise we're going to put it all out on Facebook. So is there like I could come to somebody and you could say, right, the first thing we can do legally is whatever, X, Y, Z, because people are just trying to work out their own little solutions.
So from my perspective, as somebody that works with the Sikh Press Association, and we work across the board with all Sikh community organizations, there are actually quite a few groups that can help in this kind of situation. Exactly what they'll do, I couldn't tell you, that's for them to tell you, but there are several groups. There's the SAS, the Sikh Awareness Society, Sikh Youth UK, the Sikh Helpline, and various groups that can help in this kind of situation. We're going to move on to the second question. I do apologize. We have to give adequate time for each question. So apologies to anyone who did want to comment again, but we're going to move on to our second question. Just after I asked the first question, I realized I forgot to introduce the panelists, so we're going to go back and do that now. But I'm sure you've made up your mind about them already, having just heard their comments. So on the far left, we have Manjit Kaur, who heads up the Binti Project, a charity that focuses on female menstrual dignity. I hope I described that right. Directly to my left, we have Sukhvinder Kaur, a spokesperson for the charity Sikh Relief, and also a former member of the Sikh Council, and plenty of other seva in there as well. On my right, immediately, we have Ashmeet Kaur, a poet and an activist too. Rupinder Kaur is the co-founder of the Sikh Press Association in the middle there, and on the far right, we have Sukhmani Kaur, a member of the management team of Everything 13, and specifically heading up the projects Kiddy Sangat and Mighty Khalsa. So now you know who you're hearing from. Okay, so second question of the evening. Why aren't there more Sikh women in leadership positions? Again, why aren't there more Sikh women in leadership positions? And this specifically focuses on within Sikh organizations and establishments, so think of your charities, think of your gurdwaras. The first person I'm going to go to is somebody that has headed up a Sikh organization, and that's Rupinder Kaur.
I was thinking about this question for such a long time, because in the wider context, it's difficult to have women in leadership roles, you know, generally speaking. And then Sikh women in leadership, I mean, everyone here, I know them, so I'm quite aware that there are Sikh women in leadership roles. But in terms of gurdwaras, there is a battle, there is a fight, because I feel that sometimes there's a level of conformity that's inherently kind of passed down to us growing up in Sikh households. So you would have more onus on a man to kind of say, well, he can handle this, he will handle this. If you go into a gurdwara, I mean, I've had fights in gurdwara, so I'm not the best person to kind of ask about this, but there's a level of respect that is innately given to men in a gurdwara, and women's role generally is seen in the kitchen. So, I mean, in terms of fighting that, and why aren't there Sikh women in leadership positions in gurdwara, I don't know how generally like they're set up, or the process. Is there a process? I know that there have been not campaigns, but kind of workshops for people that want to get into Sikh people that want to get into politics. Again, they're very male dominated, but I don't know if there's a platform that says, okay, if there's a new Sikh gurdwara set up, or there's a new committee, you'll find that the one woman on there might be an assistant secretary, and that's literally about it. So why there aren't more Sikh women in leadership roles, I don't think there's a lack of women trying. I just don't know what the barrier is between them trying and achieving that role.
Before we next pass on to Sukhmani Kaur, who heads up one of the biggest Sikh or most well-known Sikh organizations in the world, I want to ask you, Rupinder, from our own experience with the Sikh Press Association, would you say that it's actually fair to say, that women in our community tend to turn down media opportunities more than men? And if so, why is that the case?
I don't think they turn down opportunities. I think maybe there's maybe a confidence level in speaking to media, just in general speaking to large groups of people. I think we're kind of raised to be seen and not heard. And I think with men, generally, they're quite happy to be confident and speak up. we work really hard to find as many articulate women to speak on Sikh-related issues across the media. Just this morning, I had a call from BBC Radio 5 Live looking for Sikh women to talk about Trump's visit. And luckily, you know, we have people that we can put forward. But it really is a struggle. I don't think they turn down opportunities. I think we have to present more opportunities to women and say, this is an opportunity and we can help you become a speaker or voice your opinion, and hold their hand a little bit. So I think is making people aware. I mean, there are so many women in here that I'm sure have got so many different skills that could be great in speaking to the media, but maybe they haven't had that opportunity given to them. So I think that's key.
Passing on to Sukhmani Corner, why aren't there more Sikh women in leadership positions?
I have a joke about this. So if you've been married and you've dealt with your husband first, then you sort out the kids, and you dealt with your in-laws a little bit, and then you have to go to Gurdwara and deal with the men there. I think nobody wants to do that, right? But basically, I mean, I don't come from Punjabi household, so I came to Sikhi because of Sikhi, not because I was brought up in this. And it was quite new experience for me that I have to take a man with me to a meeting in the Gurdwara most of the time, because they wouldn't talk to me. They would sort of talk over me, and if I'll say something, they say you're being rude. I was like, I'm just trying to talk to you. So that's something I think, I mean, I don't want to sound negative towards Punjabi culture, but I think this is more sort of coming from Indian culture and Indian society, probably rules of the hierarchy in the family or the society where, as Benji said, women are sort of not supposed to speak up. Yeah.
No, actually, sorry, I was just going to interject. And there is a story of it was the first year of doing Langar Week, and we just printed these lovely shiny banners, and we're really excited about having this campaign running. And we were at Gurdwara in Southall, and we'd put the banner up, and we had quite a lot of media lined up to come down. So Jagraj Singh and I were quite excited about this first foray, and we had someone from the Gurdwara committee come down, and he said, well, you've got to take this banner down, you've got to take these posters down. And I said to him, why? I said, this is all planned. And he said, no, I don't want to speak to you, who else is in charge? So I said, I'm in charge, what's the problem? And his response was, well, when women do things, it's always wrong, because the banner had said to wash your hands and remove your shoes. Now, we just put things down for people to know what to do when you come into a Gurdwara. I explained, look, next time we print them, we'll print them in the order of how things should be done. And he was absolutely losing it. So, Jagraj came over and he said, Bardo, Sardo, and it was just that point of, you're not talking to me, or there's no level of respect, but you will happily talk to a man and have an argument there. So, that's one of the things that we do face. Like Benji said, you go into a Gurdwara as a woman, it is difficult.
I remember that incident clearly, and it was an elderly man that was angry because the order of the Gurdwara instructions said, put on a rumal and then wash your hands, and he said that should be the other way around, so cancel everything and get out of here. But we persevered. I just want to add to what Sukhmani said, actually. I was speaking to somebody who I won't name, but somebody who's very well respected in the Sikh community, who does a lot of seva and is well known for his understanding of the Sikh community and Sikhi itself. And he said, women don't have the time because nothing gets done in these meetings. You have these meetings between Sikh organizations and Gurdwara committees, and it's a load of waffle, and women don't have time for that. So that was from a man. Passing on now to Eshmeet Kaur. Why aren't there more Sikh women in leadership positions?
I just want to up the scale of this question. So thinking about on more of a outside of the Gurdwara setting, because I feel like that's already been addressed. We know that all minorities, whether that's through gender or culture or religion, struggle with this. This isn't something that's just new to Sikhi and just Sikhs. This isn't a Sikh struggle, right? It relates to a lot of people and a lot of different groups. And we know that many industries are dominated by the same type of person, a white middle-class man, and that's what we're used to in so many different regimes across the spectrums. But when I first read this question, it made me think that actually, I wonder if it's worth dividing it. So why aren't there more Sikhs in leadership positions, and then why aren't there more women? Because if we're focusing on Sikh women, then it seems to me that we're pushing down our men, and I think that's actually going backwards. We're not taking steps forward in that. That's not what Sikhi defines as equality. We don't know how many people from our community go up for leadership roles. That's not something that I'm aware of, or statistically. And the people that are in leadership roles, it does make me question actually what responsibility are they holding in order to empower other people that are interested in these kinds of things. But further to that, I don't think it's necessarily about a leadership position, because I'm very aware that most, if not all, the other women here are a leader of something, and I'm not a leader of anything. I'm not the head of any organisation. I've not established anything like that. I'm just a student, right? So to me, it might make me question, or might make somebody else question, okay, well, now I'm stuck because I'm comparing myself to what somebody else has been able to achieve or what they're doing. Oh, is their leadership position higher than how I view myself? And I think we get into a trap there where we're comparing and contrasting. So if we're looking at leadership, it should be about, okay, well, what are the qualities of a leader? Because if we look at the Guru didn't give the Guruship to the next in line. They didn't give the Guruship to their children necessarily. It was about who was able to get through those tests and who was able to overcome that because they had those qualities instilled within themselves. And further to that, if we look again at history, if we look at Mata Sahib Deva, who's the mother of the Guru Khalsa Panth, from such a young age, the Sangat where she lived used to call her Mata. And that wasn't because she was the mother of the Khalsa at that time, but more so because of her prem for Guru Sikhi, that she had those qualities of what a leader was naturally, that came to her, and that came to her through Bhakti, and that came to her through Simran and through the Kirpa of Maharaj. So for me, it's not about a leadership position, but really reflecting on, okay, myself as an individual, am I a leader within myself, or am I somebody that's conforming? And as Sikhs of the Guru, as Guru Sikhs, we're not here to conform, we're here to be different. And we shouldn't compare and contrast ourselves to other people in our circle or outside of our circle. It's all about looking inwards.
Thank you. Sukhiko, as somebody that was one of a handful of women among dozens of men on the Sikh Council, your opinion on why aren't there more Sikh women in leadership positions?
Well, just to answer that, I'm not going to repeat it, but it's everything that Sukhmani Kaur said. I have 2 kids, I have many roles, and I spent 3 years attending meetings that lasted 5 hours, which would result into a slanging match. One fight nearly broke out. And I got quite excited, I actually got involved in it because I was quite passionate on what they were fighting about. But I saw my own, you might not believe it, I'm actually quite chilled out. But I have a fine patience for BS being done in the name of Sikhi. When you see groupings and fractions, you say, you're not really caring about the issue, it's about pushing your narrative to say that I own the voice on this issue. And for me, as long as the voice is spouting the truth or the correct narrative on that issue, I'm not concerned who is pushing the narrative, male, female, grouping. But the biggest struggle that I found is actually one of the reasons I left the Sikh Council, was that we actually, as an executive, appointed our first ever female Secretary General in its 8-year history. And what happened? An all-male Board of Jathedars dissolved the executive that had appointed a female Secretary General. This is all minuted, this is all backed up with paperwork, and I sat through those meetings and I witnessed it firsthand. that for once we were going to have a female Secretary General who wasn't aligned anywhere, was actually a fantastically talented woman and had the skill set to do that job and bring a very fractured Sikh council together. And when we saw that happen, so what we're saying is structures are breaking because of the lack of recognition for women's voices. Now, what I found in many structures, and I come as a delegate from Sikh Relief, our board of directors within Sikh Relief are all female. So I'm the spokesperson, our comms, our admin is all done by women. Our team that heads up going to Gurdwara across Europe is done by women. So when I came into a structure, a national body like sort of Sikh Council, I was already kind of used to kind of pushing my weight around and having my opinions listened to from a male. So Balbir Singh's our chairman, but it was our input, our ideas and how we wanted to handle issues. You were actually a valued part of the team. That is what is lacking. I sat on the council for 3 years and I raised various issues, even simple things around, why aren't we talking about all Gurdwaras having a safe space for women to breastfeed their children, those that want to. But it was just like, because there's only 3 women within that room and I was the only one mentioning it, that wasn't priority. There was other things that were higher priority. When it came to assembling a safeguarding panel or bringing professionals in from the Sikh Helpline and other organisations to form a panel to formally deal with safeguarding concerns, all these things were shot down. And it was the same men who had sat in there for years upon years. And the question that you asked is what prevents women? I would actually rephrase and say what prevents women from holding those roles? Well, you'd get fed up if you're going to be in an environment where your opinion is not valued, you are not listened to, your concerns are not raised, you do not feel valued as an individual. Some of us kept fighting it out, but many women, we had some amazing, talented women in the early years of the Sikh Council. They gradually slipped away. I wish the new executive and the new committee that's coming now, I really do wish them the best. But the 6 women that they had, 3 of them left, and then it's like, oh, there's this big emphasis, there's more women than ever, and I'm like, geezer, you've probably only got like 4, and you've got like 300 or 120 men. That is not dealing with the issue. Tokenism is another big thing. Having your woman there for the photo opportunity to say, look, we're so diverse, we've got a woman sitting here. But when it comes to that woman speaking or her opinions, it's belittled, and I've experienced that. Or if you hold a narrative that is not agreeable by the masses, or if you're challenging something, or you're asking difficult questions, it's like, oh, why are you asking that for? You're just causing trouble, this is anti-panthic, or this is, and it's that sort of, it does exist in small pockets, this sort of bullying and intimidation. Women don't want to be part of that, especially like me, if you've got 2 kids, I'm going to balance that. 5 hours I've just spent away from my kids where I could have been doing phonics homework, which would have been so much more fun. I just wasted 5 hours there, but we persevered, and I did try, many of us women that sat there, we tried to bring women in, and they would attend the first 2 meetings, they'd be like, what the hell is this? This is what I literally, I've left my ironing, I've left my laundry, I've left all this for this. I thought this was going to be transformative. I was like, we do get there eventually, but, we get fed up and we walk away. So ultimately, it's about providing that space, not just to have your token woman there, but listening to her views and have her part of the policy making, and especially issues that are relating to women. My biggest gripe is when men are speaking on issues that should be spoken about by women, and especially those women who work in that field, whether it be politics, whether it be sexual abuse or menstrual health. It should be women owning their own narratives, and I don't think we're in that place yet. We're getting there, we're much better at it, but still got a long way to go.
Thank you for that, Banji. Manjit Kaur, why aren't there more Sikh women in leadership positions? And I'm interested to hear what you have to say, because I'm sure you'll tell us that your work with your charity might be a lot easier if there were more Sikh women in leadership positions when it comes to Sikh organisations and establishments.
Trendy to say that as Sikhs organisations, I mean, I know, for example, with how many Sikh organisations are there? 5 main ones just in the UK. I know when we talk about the work that we do, we never get mentioned by any of the Sikh organisations, apart from Sikh Press, of course. But none of them. Nobody is interested in the work that we're doing for women, even just in our community. So I don't think it'll ever change until we find a way that we can actually be equal.
Thank you for that. I just want to quickly point out that although there's been a lot of speak in kind of a general fashion across the board about the Sikh community, I think all would agree that, you know, not everything is completely black and white in terms of how women are treated, and hopefully the Sikh Press Association here, my two seniors on the end of the table, are an example of that. I also want to point out that there are different versions of events of things that you might have heard as well, so you know, do make up your own minds by doing your own research. Just touching on this question very quickly, because you spent a bit of time on it and we need to move on to the next. What advice would you actually give to young Sikh women that want to actually be involved in Bantik leadership activities, starting with Manjit Kaur?
I would say step up. Sometimes you have to find your passion, and your passion could be in many different areas, but without passion and fight, it's going to be hard for you to make your mark. So you have to be ready for a battle, really, I think, ultimately. And you've got to feel it in your belly, otherwise you'll give up. And there's plenty of organisations out there doing brilliant things. Find what it is that you like, what you think you're good at, but you've got to commit. And if you don't commit, then you'll never get that far. You'll kind of dip your toe in and dip your toe out, which is fine, because sometimes you've got to do that before you find what it is that makes you want to get up.
So, Kiko?
I think persevere, keep going, and echoing a lot about what you said. Once you've found something that you believe in and you want to see it through, and also reach out. There's so many of your other sisters that will probably support the amazing work that you're doing. Don't always look, you know, at the negative. I think that the women in our community need to get better at networking with each other. We need to be connecting more so we can be supportive of each other. You know, informal networks, talking about, you know, those rough days when you've been to the Godra and you've been shouted down by someone, but equally talk about the good experiences, because there are many, many progressive Gurdwaras out there that are supporting a lot of good initiatives. So I think networking and connecting with other like-minded women as a support system and persevere is not an easy ride. Be prepared for the abuse that you're going to get for it, because it's standard, but it shouldn't stop you from doing and making a difference, because you're all flipping awesome. You've all got something to give, and don't ever let anyone tell you any different.
Eshmeet Kaur, you might not be a leader of any organisation, but Sikh organisations have looked to you to lead certain topics or narratives. I've seen you lead a Basics of Sikhi Q&A. The Sikh organisations that helped run the June rally had you up speaking in front of thousands. So in your opinion, what advice would you give to young Sikh women looking to be more involved in leadership positions concerning Bantik activities?
Echoing back what Benji said to begin with, it is hard, but a big part of it as well is being able to create your own opportunities. If you don't feel like somebody is giving you that opportunity, then go out and make it yourself and create it yourself. And that's not easy. It's easier said than done, of course, but we don't necessarily need to fit into somebody else's structure and regime. If we've got something we need to say and something we need to believe in, then, like I was saying earlier, there's leadership qualities. We can do that ourselves. We just need to feed ourselves with the right kind of energy and able to achieve that.
Rupinder.
I know Manjit said she's been here 5 decades, I've been here 4. And I feel like I've constantly been fighting in every boardroom. My background is in the record business. And I remember a moment someone gave me advice. So we're at a record label, it's a major label. They've spent so much money on this female artist that they're going to put out. She has absolutely no say in even how her pictures look. The campaign is, they've thrown so much money at the campaign and they've missed a trick. social media, which was just starting to come up at that time. MySpace had just launched and everything was feeding off that. And I remember sitting in that room going, you're missing the trick, you're missing it. And I'm saying it inside and I'm thinking, just say it, just say it. And there was about 15 men and my boss, who was a woman, and me. And she said, what is it? And I said, well, I think they're missing a trick with MySpace and not putting money into that, and we can do X, Y, and Z. So she said to me, you have the right to sit at that same table, and you raise your hand and you don't put it down until you are heard. And then she said, what is the worst that can happen? Someone will say no. That's the absolute worst thing. And I literally lived to that to this day, where I will raise my hand, I will be heard. And what is the worst thing that can happen? Someone will say no to you and you move on. But you have to really believe that you deserve to sit at that same table with the men and be heard. So I think that's something that I still take with me today. And I'd say that's my advice to women that are wanting to move up.
Sukhmani Kaur, what advice would you give to young Sikh women looking to lead or participate in Bantik activities?
I'll probably say don't wait for approval, because it's not required. If you really feel that this is a project that's close to your heart and you really feel that you have to do it, you just do it. Even if your husband says no, then you still do it.
We'll take a couple of comments or questions from the audience. Firstly, Gabriela.
In respect of Gurdwaras, the biggest problem we got is misogyny is built in. It was planned. Most of your old men running Gurdwaras are doing it as they were taught, and they were doing it as the people before them were taught. It's all from the 1920s and the Singh Sabha movement. Do you spot what the problem is? Where's the cause? So they're working on a system which doesn't include cause. Cause are excluded. How they operate, they exclude cause. If you come forward to run for something, you will get asked some embarrassing questions, so you walk away. I've seen it happen when I was young and getting involved in Shepherd's Bush. And it's, I've been dealing with that sort of nonsense, that sort of crap up until now. It's still there, and it's got to be pushed away, but it requires a lot of reform. We cannot accept these structures which are based in the 1920s. They don't have any space for safeguarding policies that didn't exist in the 1920s. They don't have space for health and safety or anything. That's why your Gurdwaras are going wrong on a big basis around the world, because they are stuck in the 1920s and run by male-orientated organizations. So then that needs to change.
Absolutely brilliant point to highlight the systems, and if we can think back to where they stem from, then I think we can kind of start to build a better picture of what our future should look like. Did we have one more comment at the back? Yes, please, Benji.
I just wanted to add 2 points. I think as a community, we haven't yet matured enough to think about skill set. I'm going to go back to the planning days of the council. That's one of the people who are quite excited about an organisation that looked like it was really looking for talent. Barge migrating. Sorry we're talking about the council so much today, but we are talking about a very large national organisation, so it's okay because we're getting into the course of now. At the time that I got really interested, we were having the issue post 9/11 around the removal of the star at airports, and a lot of consulting behaviour and ignorant behaviour around how people were perceiving the city. And I volunteered for the organisation, not used to taking councillors, back to the council, listen, there is more to do here, and said, when I try Cardinal, this was nice, but you're going to make this time because it's really heavy, this kind of area, you know. And it happens to be somebody who's not really ever done any kind of, that run small operations within the good lot of being in a corporate environment, done that kind of stuff. Anyway, it took 3 trips to on a fairly official agenda, where volunteer in an organisation, talking about a very technical topic, and here's my colleague, who's the chair of XYZ committee, because this is his portfolio, but I'm speaking to it as an SME. It did take three very, very long meetings to say, guys, can I have a calling part that says this is a topic I'm going to speak on your behalf, on behalf of the organisation, because this extra step of here's the guy who's helping me because he's the guy who's holding the chair. Why? You lose credibility. I quote it as an example because that is the start of a repetitive process. And the underlying issue is, until we recognize that skill set is important, it doesn't matter whether you're male or female. And I think we're not in the 1920s, we're in 2020. And our young women are definitely very smart, as are young men. And I do share the comment that was made earlier, that empowerment of our youth is a very important thing. We don't see the middle layers. We need to start at the grassroots level because we don't get into the committees. And there are exceptions, obviously, we generalize in this comment. So I think bringing people up within our communities to have the confidence to be able to run things and mature and have mentors. And then once you actually get to a point where the skill set is, it doesn't matter whether you're male or female. I think a lot of us are here because our parents have done that and they're able to speak in these opportunities. But once you've done that, then I think the more you reach out, the more you speak, the tighter it turns. But it does go down to the education of the older generation and upsetting status quo within the group within the Sikh organizations. So if we just accept the status quo, it's going to work. So you've got to disrupt it and then start.
Thank you for your comment, Benji. I think the key point there was disrupting the status quo for everything we're used to. Moving on now to the third question of the evening. What barriers are in the way of more awareness about gender inequality? Again, what barriers are in the way of more awareness about gender inequality? And I say that thinking that perhaps most men in here will agree that there's quite a few topics, or at least the scale of issues that we're not quite aware of. So again, what barriers are in the way of more awareness about gender inequality? We'll start with Manjit Kaur.
So I can talk from personal experience because outside of working with Shepherd's Bush Gurdwara and Gurpreet Singh, thank you for being here today and representing all the Gurdwara in the country. I would say that from my perspective, having you here and letting you, and your desire to be here means you want to learn more so that you can implement more within your own team. And you do have women in your committee, and I think as a consequence of that, it's becoming a place where all of us can go and we can all view, we can all air our opinions and we can create change in the way that we're all proud of what we can achieve together. So for me, I would say that as an organisation, it was really important to find Sikh men that are feminists. What is a Sikh man that is a feminist? What does he look like? It's a Sikh man who believes that women are equal. To me, feminism is being equal to a man, and that's what feminist means. And I would say Gurpreet Singh, he's one of those men and somebody that I could go to and have this conversation with. To put things into perspective, I had to speak to a Gyani about periods and to explain why women should be allowed to do seva in the Gurdwara if she's on her period. That's kind of the level of the conversation I had to have. And it wasn't an easy one. I mean, firstly, I know that growing up, we were always told as daughters that we should come across as humble. If we come across as humble, there's kind of like a fine line of being humble, but then fighting for what you believe so that you can create change. And I remember my mum also using the word besharam. I'm a big besharam because if I wasn't, then I couldn't create change in the things that we've done. And I haven't always been like this. You know, I come from a very conservative family where I think the first time I ever went out in my life was when I was 25. But what I'm trying to say is that gender equality means finding people within the community that are in the same thought of what we're trying to create change about. And if you can't find them, then it's really hard to move forward. I would say that the work that we did and the work that we do, we created a period policy with the first Gurdwara in the world, and it was with the Shepherd's Bush. That was probably the hardest thing I've ever done, because we did face backlash from various bits of the community. It was kind of very disheartening, because we're obviously trying to create change that is good for the community. It had a lot to do with equality and a lot to do with this gender imbalance. I felt quite let down by the fact that we didn't have the support that we needed. So I'm very proud to be a Sikh woman, and I love many things about our religion and our faith, but I'm disappointed by the fact that there isn't equality, and we still have a long way to go. Some of the things that I would think that could happen is if we have male-dominated committees, maybe it's time to have female committees in every single Gurdwara as well. And every time a decision is to be made, maybe we let the men talk in their committees, but in order to create change, it has to then go to the female committee, and the female committee decides as a group which issues are the priorities and which ones we're going to agree on. I mean, we have to force some sort of restructuring if we're ever going to create change, because without that, we're never going to do it. We're just going to keep talking, because they're never going to listen to us. We're never going to gain the respect. We're going to be fighting for every single thing, and it's a lot of work to fight for things. So I believe that we should have female-led committees in every single Gurdwara, and then each process, if we're going to change structuring, then that's kind of how it should happen.
Sukiko, what barriers are in the way of more awareness about gender inequality in the Sikh community?
I think a lot of the conversations we had in the previous question inadvertently brought up those barriers. I will just give a different perspective on how I perceive equality. I don't measure myself as being equal in worth, and I don't put that comparison against a man. I'm a stay-at-home mom, very proud stay-at-home mom. It's the biggest achievement I ever did, was give birth to 2 amazing little boys, and I gave up a successful career in communications in the NHS to raise my boys. To this day, I do not regret that. Where I struggle with inequality is people not respecting the decision that I made, and somehow that makes me less of a feminist. I have so much respect for my sisters who juggle careers and have babies. I think you guys are awesome. I chose not to do that, and that was a personal reason. But I just find there's so many different perspectives on how we see ourselves as equal. For me, it's having my voice heard and respected. I respect my husband's role in my house. He respects mine. And for me, our house practices equality. He recognizes that I keep the house clean, I iron the clothes, his dinner's ready every day, and I do that role very lovingly. And it works because he respects my role. When I come here, I dip into all the little pots that I do because of things that I'm passionate about. I do that knowing that my primary duty will always be to raising those boys. So I think when I personally look at inequality, it's about wherever a woman is sitting within our community, she has her place and she needs to be just respected for the choices that she makes, whatever those choices are. It's not one choice. And for me, I don't see that being equal to a man. Because to me, in my house, I feel my role suppresses. It goes way above what my husband does, and he says it. Because he hasn't tried to do maths homework with an 8-year-old when they're changing the curriculum. When you guys have to do that, and then you've just finished doing aloo wale parathe, and you've got to wash up, you've got to put the kids to bed, and then you've got to get on your laptop and write a press release for a prisoner who's been released after 26 years. We have a respect in our house, and I think equality needs to be practiced at home with the father and the mother. And I think when we're looking at the next generation, because really we're going to see the change when our generation goes to have children. And if you, even before we go to the Gurdwaras, for me, it's in the house. And I'm so grateful to Maharaj that in our house we practice that, and my boys are seeing that, and my boys are taught to respect the role that their mother has. But they also see that their mother is not simply defined as only a housewife. So the way this conversation, we could do a separate panel discussion on just this. But ultimately, fundamentally, the biggest barrier about awareness of gender equality is in the family structures. Sometimes I used to get really frustrated at my nanny and my mum and thinking, why didn't you go to university? Why didn't you do this? But when I had my own family and my own children, it gave me an opportunity to reflect on the sacrifices they made to give women like me a future that they couldn't have. And this is how change will begin. And for me, it's about teaching my boys what equality means, and in our own households, having those conversations around what the role of a woman is, what the role of a man is, and respecting both of those roles in whatever shape or form they take in your house.
Thank you for that very interesting take on the fact that for some people, equality does not necessarily mean being the same. Eshmeet Kaur, in your opinion, what barriers are in the way of more awareness about gender inequality in the Sikh community?
Thank you, Bernji, for sharing that. I think that's really powerful to take note of, actually. Kind of following on from that, in a way, gender inequality doesn't exist in Sikhi. That doesn't come from Sikhi. That is colonization and then white people sifting through Sikhi and saying, oh, here you go, this is what Sikhi is, and that's what we believe. Because we're so used to seeing from the same lens, and that is a white lens. And until we stop doing that, we're not going to have an understanding of what equality in Sikhi is. It's not about being the same. It's not about comparing and trying to compete with each other. It's about fairness. That's what I believe equality in Sikhi is. So yeah, we have a lot of outside influences that we can't control, like the place that we live and social media influences. And as I said earlier, look at the country we live in and how we're dictated. We can't practice Sikhi in the way that we want to. I have to cover my shastra when I'm on the tube or when I'm out in public because I don't know what somebody's going to think of me. So actually, as a Sikh woman, I live in fear of the perception that other people are going to be, that what other people are going to be thinking of me. And that's a battle that I'm sure a lot of people in this room, Bajis and Benjis, can really understand as well, that because we look so different, we are so pressurized and have to contain our Sikhi in a certain way. So these barriers are totally out of our control. The only way that I believe we're able to tackle that is when we